Hey guys, Mike and Matt, IronTrap Garage Podcast, coming to you live. I guess pre-recorded live.
We're live right now.
Yeah, we're live right now. This is our audio podcast. I feel like we've said it enough times, but we do a podcast every Sunday. But every other Sunday we do a podcast with video, with lots of cool video effects and photos and B-roll and that kind of stuff. So today we're just coming to you audio. Any business stuff to talk about? Any?
We have the Allentown swap meet. I know
yeah.
we talked about in one of the other ones, but I feel like we always have to tell people over and over
Yeah.
again. So, Allentown, Pennsylvania, inside at the fairgrounds, they have a winter flea market. We always set up with a little bit of parts and some merch. We will be there Friday and Saturday.
I might go on Sunday because we had a bunch of people that came last year looking for shirts, so I might be there on Sunday.
Mike might be there Sunday. I will not. I'll be in the shop, probably working. But yeah, I think that's basically the only thing.
Wintertime's kind of slow for us for events and things.
We have Grand National coming up. That's the other thing I should say. We do not set up at Grand National. We just go as spectators, but we're going to try and, if we could coordinate with everybody's busy schedule, we might try and take the podcast on the road and sit down with a few friends and do some podcasting, which could be pretty fun.
Yeah.
Where it's just everybody's trying to do a million things during that week before and all that.
Especially people with cars going in there. They're on that last week thrash trying to get it ready to take. So,
and we know a couple of people that are doing that currently, and it's going to be really cool. So what I'm getting out of that is if you happen to see us wandering around, give us a high five, say hello.
Yep.
We're fairly friendly and are happy to chat, and hopefully we get to see as many people as possible and see some cool cars and get inspired.
Hopefully spend more than 6 hours at the show like last year.
Yeah, last year was we bought that Minnesota speed equipment collection, so our plans got changed, and we were like at the show,
left,
hopped on a plane, and
it was fun. But I'd spending a little bit more time at the show is a little better.
Yeah. So, so today's topic.
Yeah, we wanted to sit down and try and talk about affordable ways to get into the hot rod hobby. You know, everyone always wants a 32, 5-window, 3-window Roadster, but those could be out of people's price ranges because they're always going to be the top of the market.
Yeah, and we get, this is a question with the parts business that we get a lot. People are asking us how to, maybe they're just getting into it, or I want this, or how do you get this, or how do you find this? We also, it's kind of funny that you've seen on a lot of the Facebook groups and stuff where people are complaining that they can't have whatever, insert car or part here. And obviously we've been pretty good at building from having zero cool early Ford hot rod stuff to some pretty neat stuff. So we're going to give out some secrets that aren't really secrets.
Yeah.
We've done that a bunch over the years.
I mean, the channel was based off of that. If you can't afford a nice car, you buy bits and pieces, rough bits and pieces, and make a nice car, or you compromise and you get into the hobby with something that might be a little bit cheaper, and then eventually work your way to that 3-window or Roadster. And it's tough to compromise because you see a 32 Roadster, you really want it, but Model A Roadster might be more your...
Yeah, I think social media makes it a little more hard for people because it's like, you follow, obviously you can follow anybody on social media, so I feel like I follow, and we've talked about it a bunch, like we did a social media podcast, but like I follow a bunch of metal fab and sheet metal guys that are really, really good, and I could just get mad and frustrated why I can't do work that's as good as them. People follow guys that have really cool cars or collections or hot rod shops, and they get upset because why can't I have a 33 3-window?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you don't know the background on that person, that they probably didn't just instantly, their first car was a 33 3-window. Now, sure, people are getting into the hobby, and they maybe have money or and they could get the best thing, but in the old days, it was kind of like you got what you got. It was like whatever you could find.
Yep.
And it wasn't as much of a clout thing as it was just find something cool and build a hot rod. And that sometimes I think people lose sight of that with social media, that it's
definitely.
It feels like you're not as cool because you don't have a insert cool car here, whatever it is. And I mean, I've been doing it since any hobby or thing I've been in my whole life has always been like that. They had that red paperclip book. I think it was called Red Paperclip from Craigslist. And it's that whole idea of you start with something small or basic or worthless, and then you slowly keep trading up. So, I mean, that's literally what I did with all this stuff. Is started with, rough project car and
piles of parts clamped together in the driveway.
Yeah, and you build a car, and we talk about it a lot with a lot of our customers that are getting into stuff. It's like, well, the whole building a hot rod thing is it's a learning experience, and not until you build a bunch of these cars do you start feeling like, I just now feel like I'm like in the groove where I can build stuff a little easier without having as much frustration or surprises. So your first car, why build your dream car the first time around? Because you're going to probably mess it up, or it's not going to be as good as you want. So we always tell people, like, start with, if you only have the money to buy a Model T 4-door sedan, start with that. The concept is all the same.
Yeah.
And then as you build that and make it something cool, if you do it right with some of the tips like we're going to give you guys, you can hopefully sell it and create a chunk of money that you can then turn into the next.
Yeah, because a hot-rodded Model T is definitely going to be worth more than an original Model T. Yeah.
And maybe a 4-door wasn't the best thing, best suggestion, because that's a pretty hard sell. But still, I mean, if you make it cool, it's going to be, you're right, it's going to be an easier, more valuable.
And that even flows into Model A. A hot-rodded Model A is always going to bring substantially more than an original Model A.
If done right, yeah. Now, it's always, there's always that caveat of if you have a 100-point, like, amazing restoration, sure, they do bring a lot of money, but 90% of the quote-unquote restored Model Ts, As, early Fords on the market are amateur restorations that, especially if they were restored a long time ago, are, failing or not as good. But in the hot rod world, that looks cool because we somehow embrace the shittiness.
Yeah.
And it works out nice. But I've always found that it was like trying to find a vision of what I wanted to build. And then it was like, how can you find that thing that is close to that as possible?
Yeah.
So,
and also a lot of people that I talk to, since I run the parts business, I ended up talking to a lot more people about building projects and that kind of stuff. And it's always more of they just want an old car to drive. It's not that they've always wanted a 32. It's just, like you said, it's social media that's the cool hip thing, which has always been the cool 30. The early Ford to own has always been a 32. But everyone clings to that, and it's more or less they just want an old car to drive and enjoy. It's like, well, 32 is cool. It's great. But if you go a little broader, the price drops off a bit, and you can find something that's more affordable that you won't be scared to drive. You start getting a nice 32 Roadster. It's a lot of money, and you chip the paint, so you get a Model A. You could just get out and enjoy it, and don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, and I think back to like what I was saying, like if you mess something up or you don't, if you start trying to fabricate something, motor mounts, whatever, and you cut up an original 32 frame, and then you decide you don't like what you did, like it's a lot easier to start over
with a Model A frame,
with another Model A frame than a 32 frame. So if you're going to learn, definitely learn on something that's not as good. But like I started looking at what did I want to build. And then also if you look at the old magazines and old photos, like, yes, it was mostly early Fords, but there was a lot of other cars. Or there's some cars that are kind of famous that maybe not the whole body is Ford. We think it is, but like they start with a Dodge body or, whatever. And so there's some of those. So if you start looking around, you could build something pretty cool. And we talk about sometimes where some of the makes actually were better looking in a non-Ford. So like, for instance, GM, I'm thinking about it because I'm doing the Merc shop right now, but like everybody's talking about like slanting the B-pillar. We're thinking like that, what was it, a 37 or 40 Chevy we pulled out at that?
Yeah, they had slanted B-pillars.
That one we pulled out, and it was like, it has a factory slanted B-pillar, 5-window coupe. It's like, all you do is just, even as it sits, it looks better at that. And the side profile than a Ford, but like you chop that thing and it's already like flowing. It looks great, and you could buy one of those Chevys for like, I mean, that one at that auction went for not
Pretty
a lot,
cheap,
$4,000 or something. And it was
and
like,
it was like $4,000.
It was like $4,000, and then the 40 Ford, which was probably more rough than it. I don't know. It was maybe
They're about the same.
about the same, but that went for like 10 or 12 grand. I think I ran it up to 10. It might have went for 11 or 12 grand.
Yeah.
So it's like that car went for over double, and they were probably similar condition.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both the same era. You could do all the same modifications to the two of them, and they'll both look cool. So
the same thing falls for 32. I mean, some of like 32 Mopars.
Oh yeah.
They have 3 windows too, and the bodies are actually a little bit bigger. So someone of my height, you fit in that 3 window a little bit better after chopping and channeling it. And the price difference between a 32, say Plymouth 3 window body and a 32 Ford 3 window body is like, the price difference is insanely different. So
I think every 32 that was made was cool. Like
just
every manufacturer in 32.
It's like the perfect year. Actually, 32 to 34, I think. There's like the perfect years where everything was like designed perfectly.
I think almost all the manufacturers nailed it. You know, when you look at any 32 I see, I'm like,
you know, there's gonna be some comments. Someone's gonna leave like 32 X, Y, and Z, and you look it up and you're like, oh, okay, not everything.
I've
about 90% probably.
Yeah, I mean, almost everyone I could think of is like pretty nice. So, but yeah, you could start with a 32. One of our friends locally did that. Barry did that 32 Chevy.
Oh yeah,
and it is like, I'll put that against any 30. And he has a 32 Ford 5 window.
Yep.
But he built this 32 Chevy.
That's a 3 window, right?
I can't remember.
I think it's a 3 window.
Yeah, I think it might be, but it's like a 50 style high rod. It is so bitchin'. It's got a Caddy engine in it, and it sits right, and lots of chrome, and it's just like so cool. And when you see that car, you're not like, oh, it's a shame it's a Chevy. You're just like, man, this thing's
And I mean, it goes back to the thing that all of us are going for. It just has to look right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could build Chevy, Mopar, Ford, as long as it sits right and looks right. No one's going to care that it isn't a 32 3-window body. You know what I mean? If it sits right and looks right, people just breeze past all that and they go, that thing looks awesome.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it even lends itself more with the custom cars because you could, a custom car, a full-on custom, you barely could tell what the car, by the time you start changing everything, you could barely tell what the car is anymore. So it's like, at that point, you're just starting with a body that has good overall shape and lines, and you're changing you're changing the headlights, the grille, the taillights, you're chopping it, your door handles are coming off, and it's like you're kind of creating
You're decking the hood so it doesn't even have the right shape to it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of that stuff could change. But I mean, some of the tips I've found over the years that have helped me is, definitely trading. And I feel like in old cars, that is like still one of the few places in our society these days where bartering and trading is a huge part of our hobby and our lifestyle. Like so many guys I know have bought, sold, traded, bartered, whatever, to get themselves where the car that they have. And I still, even though I have a lot of stuff, I still do it to this day.
We get a ton of people that are like, hey, you have this that I want, and we want to trade. It's like, I'd love to trade, but we kind of have a business that's selling. We just trade junk for junk. We're never going to get rid of anything.
But we do it occasionally if somebody's got something interesting, or we've had people with the business that have offered stuff for like a credit, and as long as it's in our favor, again, we run a business. You could say what you want. But I was more like, we still do it. Like we have people that we know that like maybe have a service they can do for us.
Oh, it's true.
So like we will give them a discount or give them credit. Our friend and local customer Rick helped with a bunch of the electric stuff for the new service for the shops, and it was like I was trying to pay him, and he's like, no, I'm going to need parts, so like don't worry about it. It's like I don't mind doing that. We try not to do it a ton, but like that I've always done that. It's like, oh, I got a buddy that's into upholstery. So like if he wants to buy something from me, you're gonna like either give him a deal or like, hey, that $300 is take it off my bill. And usually those guys that do services love that because it's like it feels free, quote unquote. So it's like me doing a patch panel or something in a car and trading somebody something. Like, over the years, I've found that I've gotten so busy that I try not to trade my labor for something because I have less time than I have anything these days. But I've always done that, like trading parts or trading whatever. And if you quickly look around at your group of friends and we all have like something we're good at, or you have to offer in a group of car friends, and it's like I had a bunch of guys, Andy Kraus that has his grandfather's Roadster, and him and a couple guys visit his father, and another guy visit, and it was like they were talking about, it's like their one buddy's the welder out of all of them. So when he was putting the Roadster together, that guy was kind of leading the project, along the way. So it's like you always have that friend that's like, this guy can weld pretty good. This guy can kind of do upholstery. Oh, this friend's in a previous life was a painter and he's good at bodywork and paint.
I feel like that's how back in the day cars were built, because it was just like everyone would pass their cars round robin around the people. Like, oh, well, he's working on my car, I'm working on his car. We'll get everything done together and we'll all have kick-ass cars. Everyone has their talent. Let's just build a bunch of cool shit together.
And I think that was the early days of hot rod clubs and car clubs.
Yeah.
Stuff's changed a lot these days with car clubs, but like early days of hot rod clubs, I felt like that's what it was. Everybody was trying to working together to build cars so that the club as a whole had the coolest cars. But like we were talking about that when Andy was here and a couple of guys were here. It was like you had that friend that worked at the chrome shop. Like all these guys had chrome, and it was like the one guy in the club worked at the chrome shop, so everybody had tons of chrome on their car.
Friends and family discount.
Yeah, so he was doing stuff at night or whatever, and and then you help the chrome guy do whatever. So I think that still lends itself true these days.
We got to find ourselves a friend with a chrome shop.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It's the only thing we're missing.
Yeah, that would be dangerous for me.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that's always been the thing, is that you're good at whatever said thing is. I've been trying to get better. I've been trying to make a point in the recent, past year or two to slow down and start getting back to that fun part of helping friends, even though I don't necessarily am doing it for the trading. I'm going a little left field, but some of my friends, I'm not doing it because I need anything from them. It's just that that's the essence of the hobby, is like building cars with your friends and driving them with your friends and hanging out. And so I'm like, I have some, our friend Pete's car is a good example. We just brought it in recently. We helped him swapped the engine for him. It's like we're bringing it in and we're doing a bunch of work for him. Pete's always giving us, Pete's older, so physically he can't give us a lot of help. Yeah. But Pete's given me a ton of knowledge over the years, and been a great mentor and friend that way. But also parts in the past, 10 years, it's like he's always bringing stuff over, and it's kind of a running joke now what he's going to bring. But he's always bringing us stuff, and whether it's grommets or gaskets or whatever, that's how he's helping us. So we're paying him back. But that, my friend Nick, I'm going to help him with his Roadster pickup. And again, Nick's not necessarily, it's not like I'm trying to get anything out of him, but it's cool to help a friend get a car on the road. And if I can get him over the hump, he goes and buys and sells like we do. So sometimes he finds some pretty neat stuff. So he's already I got a 32 license plate from him and some other stuff. So it's it all in the end works out. I think it just gets sticky when you start tit for tat. It's oh, well, that part that you traded me was $38 and my labor was $150. Yeah. It's just if everybody's happy, you're happy. Don't break it down to that level. But the bartering is I
think that's the only hobby that's the only hobby left that's still, I mean, unless there's other hobbies out there I don't know about, but I feel like bartering is still is kind of the only thing that happens in our hobby.
Probably as regularly. Yeah. Or is so built into the hobby.
Yeah, it's like a cornerstone of the hobby.
Yeah, because there's a lot of guys that we've run into that they don't want to sell something. They only want to trade. Yeah. And it's kind of frustrating sometimes, but I get it. And they're and I guess I'm getting to that point where there's if somebody wanted, I don't know, something that's in my personal collection, private collection, they really needed it. It's not that we got plenty of other stuff to sell to pay the bills. I'm I don't know. But if you brought me something that was really cool, that piqued my interest, well, then I might trade it. So you gotta, the trading is huge, and that's a big part of it. But the trading up is the other thing. Like for the long term goals of affording a hobby or getting better cars or parts is just like build a car, get the practice in, sell that car, get some money, buy something better, buy better parts, and slowly step up. Or if you have a car that you're driving that's done and you want to upgrade whatever it is, a cooler intake, magnesium wheels instead of steel wheels. Got the car, you're driving it, and then look for that deal to get those wheels and upgrade the car. And
yeah.
I think that's a big way to do it. But, side work is also like, I was doing a side hustle for nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Coin terms. But, I feel like since the beginning of doing car stuff, people were doing side work or side hustles. So again, you're doing work on the side after work to make money to afford that project or that thing. For me, it was always buying and selling. So I would go to swap meets or whatever and buy things and flip them to make some money to afford the stuff I had. So that side hustle thing, that's, even though it's kind of like trendy to do now, that's the only way I ever was able to afford the hobby since before I was even into early Fords. It was like any car hobby. It was like I always had to do some side stuff just to make extra money other than the rent or the mortgage or whatever. So what about like building skills? So doing as little, paying to have as little done as possible.
Yeah, that's a great way to to build a car for a lot less, because some of the rates to get shop work done is like astronomical. Trying to afford to pay a shop to build a car is, you're creeping up on 6 figures for a full build, and no one can afford that nowadays.
Yeah, most people can't, especially if you're just getting into this stuff.
And it ties into the barter thing too. You might be really good at doing wiring on a car. Your friend's really good at welding, and you trade back and forth. But I think, doing as little as much as possible, learning through YouTube or other ways to build your own car is definitely going to save you a ton of money.
Yeah, and I've talked about it over the years. I think we actually talked about it. I don't remember which podcast to talk about, but like when a lot of times when you're trying to save money or you don't have the money to get into this stuff or whatever, you usually have more time
always
than you have money. There's always like that balancing act of when you have money, you usually don't have time.
Yep.
So when you have nothing but time in the world, go learn. So I've talked about before, like when I had more time, I would go and work at a buddy's shop and just look over his shoulder and give him help. And I learned a lot, which now is paying off later because I can do all my own metal work. I'm not paying a shop tens of thousands of dollars to do metal work. So that part of it is huge. And I think there's some aspects that I wish I would have spent more time learning, because I probably would be better or, less inclined to send it out. But if you have the time to learn, definitely take those advantages. Go to a guy's shop, offer to help or hang around or whatever and get those skills, because if you don't have the money to build your project or buy that project, well, then at least you could be getting those skills. So when you do have...
It also ties into building your first hot rod using something that's not as valuable, because you could just learn by doing.
Yeah.
Try and weld in your own patch palette and you learn from your mistakes and fix it, or try and paint it. I'd rather mess up a paint job on a cheap Model A than a 32 or something like that. You could just learn by physically doing. And if the car's not worth a whole lot, if you mess it up and you have to fix it, it's not a catastrophe.
Yeah, definitely. That's true to an extent, but if you're totally botching a car up, it might be better to learn with somebody that knows. And nowadays, it's a lot easier. Back in the day, there wasn't there was shop class, so I guess it's not apples to apples, but nowadays there isn't shop class. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people that offer classes, metal shaping classes, welding. There's people that have shops or professionals that are doing their own very specific class. You can go and learn pinstriping, or guys doing. I've seen some of the body shops now. They're doing like a body class, and some of that stuff is helpful, because if you want to learn to get better. And there's certainly classes, community colleges and things like that. The thing I struggle with some of the traditional tech school or college or whatever, a lot of it is you're not getting the stuff, what I really need to know. Like if I'm taking a class and I really just want to learn how to do MIG weld a patch panel in, doing 2 weeks of metallurgy and theory to learn how to use a MIG welder is probably...
Yeah, I don't need to know why the paint adheres to metal. I just need to learn how to paint the car.
Yes. And when you get to a higher level of work, certainly understanding the science behind it is going to help. But like we could cut this 1 week theory section down to 1 hour or 2 hours or the first day of the class. Yeah. And then we can move on and start teaching. And I think that's what some of these individual classes do. Like even when I took a Ron Covell class once or twice, I think like he did like the first day or first half a day was kind of like theory and teaching about metal. And then it was like, okay, let's get into like what you want to learn, how to do this. And it's like Gene, even like taking a Winfield class, he didn't get real in depth about how the molecules in metal move. He's kind of like, okay, here's what you need to know for practicality, how to make something. Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing with taking some of these classes. You can understand. Now, if you're taking another coach building class, well, certainly that's a much higher level. They're going to be teaching you things that are way higher end, so it might make sense to talk more about the science of it. But these individual classes are kind of cool because you can kind of understand what the teacher's going to do rather than a tech school where they're going to do the textbook way of
the technical
aspect. Here's the chapter 1. Let's read through the book. I'm terrible at learning that way, so I would just fall asleep.
Oh yeah, it's all about the hands-on for me. I couldn't sit and learn theory and all that stuff. It's not for me.
Yeah, there was 2 guys that were here from the local museum looking at the Mercury, and they were asking me, how'd you learn and all this different stuff, and like I was telling them a lot of the classes I took or people that I looked over the shoulder learning, I might have only took one little tip. 2-day, 3-day class, there was like 2 tips that I can remember now from that whole class that I took away that helped me, and sometimes they were the most simple. How do you trim a panel? How do you line a panel up? What do you do in this instance? And then all the other stuff just kind of like I didn't learn or went over my head. And it's like you're just going to help a buddy do something or work on their car. You might pick that practical tip up that's going to help you learn how to weld a patch panel in that you were doing it totally the wrong way. And now you learn. So, yeah, I think one of the big ones for sure is definitely like if you have time, learn. Soak up the knowledge, whatever it is, reading magazines to learn what parts people were looking in cars and educating yourself. If you do want those rare parts or the really cool stuff for your car, well, educating yourself on what they are will help you because then when you're out in the wild at Carlisle or Hershey or LA Roadster Show, walking around and you see it in the wild and it's cheap, you already know what it is, you know what it fits, you can boom, zero in on it and get that deal. But if you're like, just kind of like fishing and you don't really know, you're not sure of yourself, you might miss the deal.
Yeah, so exactly.
There's educating yourself in general on skills and what you want to build is going to help big time. I mean, the education side of it is also going to save you money because how many people do we talk to that buy all the wrong parts?
Oh, all the time.
I mean, you tell me all the time we get customers that are like, we're talking them out of buying something.
I hate doing it because we're selling parts, but at the same time they call and I'm like, I need an X, Y, and Z. I'm like, it's not going to work. I can sell you the part, but it's physically not going to work. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't remember any recently, but it happens quite often.
We get it like even like with early Fords, flatheads, like people not with the torque tube thing throws people off. So like they'll have a transmission and they don't realize that it's like, well, that's a torque tube transmission, not a open drive. And you got an open drive rear and a closed drive trans, and you got to swap these parts out.
And the thing that happened recently, we had a 39 Zephyr trans for sale, and everyone is hunting a Zephyr gear set, which came, I think 42 was the first year that gear set came out, 41 or 42.
It's 8,
Yeah, so it's the the correct ratio gives you the best drive ratio for a transmission. So everyone thinks it's a Zephyr gear set. It's in all Zephyr transmissions. So we had a 39 box for sale, and I could have sold it probably 4 times to different people. They're all like, what gear set is in it? Well, 39 Lincoln has the exact same gear set as a 39 Ford. So I'd love to sell it to you, but it's not what you're going to be looking for.
Right. Yeah. So that's true. But like a lot of people aren't educated, or they didn't realize that. That's a pretty obscure one, but you might have put, if you were at a swap meet and the guy goes, I don't really know. It's a Zephyr Trans, whatever. Or maybe that guy doesn't even know, and they don't count, and they spend $1,000 on the transmission.
It's a bunch of money to spend on a hunch.
And we get that a lot where people buy stuff, or you're putting an Olds in your car and you don't realize the different series of Olds engines, and you go buy a really expensive intake and you go to buy it bolted on your engine. You're like, oh,
it doesn't work.
That doesn't work. Well, there goes $1,200 or whatever it is. And I think it is part of the rite of passage of building these cars, is that you need to learn that way a little bit. Yeah. But if you're going to if you try and just sit down and learn this stuff a little ahead of time in your free time, that's going to save you a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
I've had numerous friends that are like, it's just like them bitching or crying. We cry to each other. It's not like that I'm saying it's a bad thing, but like, you see each other at events and it's just like, man, remember that XYZ that I got at Hershey last year?
Wrong.
Yeah, I finally, a year later went to bolt it on the car and it's totally the wrong intake. And you're just like, oh no. And like,
yep.
You had the carbs rebuilt for it. And it's like all these things. So it's like really making sure that everything is what you want. It's the right thing, educating yourself on that. Because this stuff's so...
And the cost to repair stuff too. Like
True.
Gauges.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you obsess over like some insanely rare, cool gauge, but you don't realize that you also have to send them out to be restored.
It's like $2,000 to restore these gauges.
Like, I got this great deal on these gauges. Like, it's a great deal until you send it out to Bob's Speedometer to get it redone, and now it hurts a lot.
Yeah. That's a big thing. I had sticker shock the first time that I sent any gauges away to have any gauge work done. Not saying that those people aren't worth the money, but like you just kind of like, it's just a little gauge. What's it going to cost?
That was in the T, right? The first time you sent gauges out to get restored?
Yeah, the T, I sent away those gauges, and I didn't even have them visually restored. It was just mechanically.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't remember what it was. Over $1,000 later for 2 gauges. Now,
for a car that you have $0 into, it's a lot.
Yeah. That's when things started to get upside down. You're like, wait, this car was free except for the gauges and some other stupid things. You're like, crap. But yeah, I mean, it's even like when you're at the swap meet or you're out buying parts and you're looking at, maybe that guy has 2 sets of gauges and he's got the restored ones. And we were just talking about it with that grill I bought at Moultrie the other year. Like, so a good example of this was we were at Moultrie and I bought a chromed. There's like one guy I think in the country or
Nottingham.
Yeah, he's making 33 grills. They're very good quality reproduction, and I don't know what they are. They're $2,000 or something for.
I think they're like $2,500. They're
unchromed.
Yeah, they're dipped. I think.
Maybe zinc plated or something.
I think they're zinc plated, but they're not chromed.
Yeah, so then you got to spend another, $1,200 or whatever it is to have it chromed. And this guy had a chromed Nottingham grill. He probably got a swap meet for a good deal, and it was never put on a car. And we were at the swap meet, and it was like $3,000 the guy had on it. And it's like, whoo, I'm like, and I had a bunch of junky grills kicking around, and I'm like, I got my 3-window in the back of my head, and I'm like, don't know if I'm going to paint it really nice or leave it patina. And it's like, I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, if I wanted to get an original one I have re-chromed and fixed, I'm going to have $2,000, $2,500 in it by the time you repair an original grill and have it chromed and blah, blah, blah. Or if I went to get the reproduction from this guy, he's usually backlogged. So there might be a year or 2-year wait. Then you have to have it chromed. And then you're still into it for the same money or more. And I'm like, or this guy right now, I could buy it. I have it. It's as good as money in the bank because if I decide I don't want it, I could turn it over and sell it for the same money or more. So it's like, sometimes it's the time, or with some of this stuff, you just can't get it when you want it. So, like, who knows? Nottingham might stop stamping those grills, much like Bob Drake stopped making 34 grills.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, now they're scarce again.
Oh, like the running boards.
Yeah.
33.4 running boards used to be like $800 for a pair.
Man.
What are they? Guys are getting what, like two?
I think I saw a set of Hershey that were like $3,500. A guy was asking.
So crazy
for new Drake running boards, but nobody makes them.
Yep.
Nice originals are pretty much non-existent. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. But so if you see that deal, sometimes it seems like a lot of money, and then you start running in your head, and you're like, well, if I go to redo that car, knowing my luck, it'll be like the car's ready to go to paint, or we painted it, and I still can't find a grill. What am I going to do? Put a crappy grill on a nice painted car?
Or spend for a nice original 33 grill that's like perfect. You're looking at 3,500.
And
like
I mean, if
perfect
it was
33 grill is
with
they don't exist.
Chrome, I mean,
I've never seen one.
Yeah, I don't know what you would spend on it. So I bought the grill, and it was kind of like, at first it was like, oh man, why did I do that? Now after I have it, I'm like, you know what, I got it, and the day I go to put that on, I'm not gonna be thinking about the money I spent. I'm gonna be like, man, I'm so glad I have this.
That looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks great. So now we have it somewhere floating around.
Is it on the wall?
No, I think it's sitting. Oh, it might be on the wall. I also have some 34 grills that were re-chromed or restored that are the same idea. It's like grills, I feel like, are one of those things that are like, if you could find a deal on a grill,
it's like having a bank account.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't need it, but also like it's one of those things that when you need a 32 to 34 grill and you want a nice one, or any of the pieces that go on those grills, it's like, if you need one and you put a want to buy ad up, I mean,
be prepared to spend.
Bend over.
Yeah.
I mean, it just happened to me with a Caddy trans adapter. You know, I sold the trans adapter.
Yeah, we had one 2 or 3 years ago, and I sold it. And I checked before I sold it. I did check.
And then we got this engine, and I decided I needed one. And I put a want to buy ad up on one of the Facebook groups, and a guy hit me, and I paid $150 or $200 more than what we sold the last one for.
$150. Ours also had a tiny bit of damage, but still, it's like
I still could have used it.
Yeah, the adapter was basically free from all the other stuff that we sold from that estate. So
yeah,
it hurts.
It sucks because I sold it. So it's realizing the scarcity of this stuff. If you think you're going to use it, I know a lot of people. There's a lot of people frowning on hoarding parts or saving stuff, but if you could see yourself using it, or you're like, oh man, I always wanted to build a car with an XYZ, those hard to find parts, buying them ahead of time, it's going to save you money in the end.
And that's a good tip for building a hot rod. It doesn't have to be a winter project. It could take you 5 years to assemble, like, say you want to build a 32 Roadster, but you buy it one door, one quarter at a time. That could be a cost-effective way to build a Roadster, because quarters are always more expensive when they're in pairs. And doors. Yeah,
it's just a matter of I always hesitate with that. I have a love-hate relationship with guys that build cars that way, because if you could put the stuff together in a timely fashion, but we've also met like old guys that like they never actually got a car on the road.
They have 2/3 of a 32 Roadster because they never found that one quarter panel.
Yes, and it's like they spend their whole life gathering parts, and they never really had a car on the road. So I try and hesitate when we have customers that are trying to buy stuff from us to do it that way, and you're like, man, that's a tough road to do it. And you really got to be hunting. I mean, the stuff's not out there like it used to be.
That's true.
But it is a cost-effective way to do it, to buy it in pieces and build something up, or being willing to modify or cut up a car that's less desirable. So you see that a lot in the recent years, 32 or 33 to 4 doors, and people making them into 5 windows or 3 windows. It's like, well, 33 4 coupes have gotten so expensive. Projects, buy a 4-door and cut it up and turn it into something cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it's gotten really crazy now, where you're seeing like Zephyrs. 37 to 40 Zephyrs or 39 Zephyrs, guys are buying 4-doors, paying shops to cut them up and turn them into 3 windows.
You could buy conversion kits on eBay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, those those are, you still takes a lot of skill to make even buying those pieces. But yeah, I mean, that's a good example. You could have a 3-window Zephyr and you buy those parts from Fat Fender Customs.
Yep.
And you then buy a 4-door project that's pretty inexpensive, and if it has all the right Zephyr parts on it, you do the conversion, and you be into it. For, a 3-window Zephyr is a nice one is a 6-figure.
Easily
a 6-figure car. So now you're into it, and maybe you're only into it for $20,000, but you got a car that looks just as cool. And sure, if you ever go to sell it, it's not a real 3-window, so to speak, but you're still going to get a lot more money than that 4-door.
I feel like guys have been doing that even with Model A coupes. They've been cutting the roofs off and making them coupesters for forever.
That doesn't really make them worth more.
No, it doesn't, but it can get you if you can never find that Roadster. Guys just cut the roof off and make it a Roadster.
They've been doing that since beginning of time.
Yeah, exactly.
So many coupesters that were out there in the old magazines that you see, and it still look cool. It's nothing wrong with it. I think, again, it's that whole, people frowning on it because it's not a real Roadster. And I've struggled with that, trying not to do that in myself. I used to be more snobby about that stuff, and I'm like, why? I just, if it's cool, it's cool.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Another thing we didn't mention too is if you've always wanted a 32 Roadster, but you can't afford an original 32 Roadster, there's nothing wrong with a Brookville body.
No.
It's, it's way cheaper to just buy a Brookville body, or, even they do Model A bodies as well.
Yeah, and fiberglass as well. It's the same thing. I think I always have this conversation with people and customers that, we have customers that will talk to us at events or come here to visit the shop, and they almost apologize to me because they have a fiberglass car.
Yeah.
I hate them. It's for me personally, I want the real thing, because part of my fun with the hobby is chasing the real stuff. I've always been that way. I want the real thing, and that's just because I like the hunt. But if you want to go buy a 3-window fiberglass car tomorrow and build it up and build, a bitchin' hot rod, nothing wrong with that. There's tons of cars running around, and it's sometimes very hard to tell the difference between a Brookville or a fiberglass car when they're painted nicely and done.
Yeah.
Then
there's 2% of the world that can tell the difference.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just gonna think it's for 32.
Yes, I don't think it matters. Now, I have sometimes a problem with people that have those cars that are looking to get in an argument because it's the fiberglass car is better, or they're whatever. They're justifying it. It's in the end of the day, the real deal is the real deal. I don't care what you say. Your fiberglass car isn't really a 32 Ford. It resembles a 32 Ford. You could title it as a 32, but at the end of the day, it's not the real thing. And if you go to see a cover band, it's not the real thing.
Yeah.
I don't care how good they do, and the guy grows his hair out the same. It's not the real fucking thing.
No, it's not.
If I want to go see Slayer, I want to see Slayer.
Yep.
I don't want to see Mariachi Slayer.
Is that a real thing? Is that a real thing?
I saw Metal Mariachi at SEMA one year accidentally. I stumbled into a bar, and there was Metal Mariachi, and it was a metal band that played mariachi, and they just did covers of famous metal songs. It was actually quite amazing. That probably wasn't a good example, but they were really great.
I know what I'm looking up on YouTube tonight.
Oh, you should look it up. They're pretty good. It's really, really cool. And it was man, I would love to do that. I need to have them play at a local Mexican restaurant. It would be awesome.
That's
we need to get ideal. That's my birthday party.
Wheels of Time next year. Ooh. We're gonna replace Flaming Dicks.
Metal Mariachi. Oh my god. Oh, we should talk to Jack. Gasket Goons. They'd be more inclined to do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Metal Mariachi band. Hopefully they're not booked up. We'll see.
Might be a little expensive.
If you wanted side tangents, we're on one. Right
yes, major.
None of this has anything to do with making your project more affordable.
Yeah.
But you did learn about something you didn't need to know, and you're probably Googling it right now.
Metal Mariachi's getting a ton more views. All of a sudden, they're like, "What happened?
What happened here? That's crazy." But yeah, I think that the fiberglass car, the repro, the steel bodies, There's nothing wrong with any of those. It gets you into the hobby, and it's the same idea too. Like if that gets you a 32 and you're driving it and you really want the real deal, well, now you at least have something on the road and you could start looking for.
Yep.
And then you can go and sell it. And I did that. I don't know how many years ago it was, but we call it the Matt Fields from Seattle Speed Shop actually nicknamed it, but the free window.
Oh yeah.
We bought an estate, and people were kind of confused. We bought this estate that was a Brookville, the guy passed away, but it was like an abandoned Brookville Roadster 32 Roadster project, and I bought it. We spent a bunch of money to buy this estate and all the contents and parts because there was scraps of a abandoned
and really good gauges too.
Really good gauges, but like there was a 32 3 window, a real Henry 32 3 window in pieces that the guy was working on before the Roadster, but it came with like all the like repair parts, all the new wood, Brookville sub rails, all that stuff, and it was like, man, I want to, it's a real 3 window. So I put it aside, and we sold everything from the estate. I kept 2 sets of gauges, maybe some LaSalle parts, which
they're still on the shelf.
Typical. And
the free window.
The free window, and it like I'm gonna build it, I'm gonna put it together, but like that was one of those instances I could have very quickly sold that body and made a bunch of money, but like in the long run, it's gonna save me money because if I decide we get some engine or some idea, and I go and try and buy a 32 3 window body, I'm gonna be into it for a bunch of money. Or buy one that's in that condition, I'm still going to be into it for a bunch of money.
Just for the doors.
Yeah, it had nice chopped doors, and knowing what I went through and how much I spent to get one for the other.
You actually had those doors first.
Oh, I did, and I was like, oh man, it kind of
Do I chop the body to match the doors, or what do I do?
But I felt bad because then I had all those pieces.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, actually. I would have been smarter to use those doors. Whatever.
You got a cool door on the wall now.
I got an extra door. Now I have a spare door for the next 32 3 windows someday. But that's how this all joking aside, that's literally how 90% of the people in this old hot rodding, traditional hot rodding custom thing, we're all like that. It's like, I got that extra door and I'm joking, the next 3 window project. But like now, if we're ever out somewhere and I see a piece of a car, or it's crazy things like that happen. Like I have that door, and somebody's selling a 32 3 window, missing a door on Facebook Marketplace.
What side is it? Do you know? Don't look. Don't look. You know what side you need?
I could think about it and figure it out. The passenger side.
Correct.
Because I remember that car needed the driver's door.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can remember that.
I got to test him so it's fresh in his memory when he goes, you fuck up and buy a 3 window that needs a driver's door. And you're like, no.
If it's a good deal, I'll still buy it.
Yeah.
But like what I'm getting at is like, if you have the parts, or like, maybe not one door, but say there's a Model A Roadster you see somewhere, a body, and it's missing both the doors. Well, if you picked up a set of doors for cheap at another flea market, like, in the back of your head you have those pieces and you can buy that car. So like, I feel like we're always saving. There's always a level of buying stuff for a good deal and putting it aside for a future project. So that is definitely an affordable way. I've built some cool cars. It's like
that also wraps into our other podcast, Car Guy Math.
Oh yeah, 100% Car Guy Math. But it is a real thing.
Yes.
I mean, we can actually add it all up if you don't count your time, or storage fees or anything else. And I guess if I add in like building extra buildings to house all this stuff, it probably
pay Steve's pay.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's not a great deal, but just the car. Makes sense. But if you can buy some of these parts, again, when you have time and no money, understanding, that goes back to what we were talking about, understanding what you want to build and what parts you want, so you can, and what they're worth, so you could recognize the deal and buy it. So you don't have to buy, that's probably another good tip, is you don't have to buy the project car or pieces of it in a specific order. You buy it when it's a good deal.
I mean, we do that with our projects. We have all the bips and bobs for it, and then we buy the project. You put all the cool shit on it, and you're like, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. A lot of times people are like, I can't believe you put that car together so quick. It's like, well,
we have an advantage.
Well, but still, I had the engine sitting aside for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I had these hubcaps over here for 5 years, and these wheels, and the tires I bought for a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I do that. Well, tires is a big one. They're so expensive. I always am looking to buy good deals on tires at flea markets.
Probably like 10 pairs above us right now on top of the office.
Yeah, that's why we're able to make because I like making rollers. So
Yeah.
I always tires are the one thing. If you can't get the right tires so it sits right, it's like ruins it. So buying all those parts, they don't need to be in order if you know what you need. So if you know what size tires you kind of want to run, or wheels. If you roll up on those wheels and they're like a good deal and those are the ones and you don't have a body, you don't have anything, well, now you got the wheels and you got a good deal on them. So, an engine or whatever. And
the taillights you always wanted to run. The steering wheel you always wanted to run.
Yeah, that's the stuff that's...
Especially at swap meets. I mean, you could slowly piece together all the toppings you want to put on the car, but you're still waiting for that main body.
Yep.
You'd find all the cool shit and just wait for that right deal for the body, and then you got a head start of building your car because you got all the extra shit
right
that you want to put on it.
And I'm doing that currently myself with a lot of... There's cars that I'd like to own or build that are kind of expensive, and I have the stuff. So I got like my blown olds.
Yeah.
I have a car in mind or one or two different potential body styles, and it's like, but I don't want to start with it. I don't need to at this point start with a rusted, broken in half body because I have enough projects. So it's like I'm waiting for the right deal on a pretty nice solid body. Either it has good patina or it's an old restored car, whatever, to put that engine in. So it's like, and as I'm doing that, I have the rear. We got the Olds rear for it and the LaSalle trans, and I'm slowly putting all these pieces together. So when we come across that body, since I'm hoping to buy something that isn't a rusted POS, the car will kind of go together quickly because it's like, okay, well, here's all the major stuff. The engine's rebuilt. You've rebuilt a trans. The rear's rebuilt. And next thing you know, you got a car in like a matter of a summer.
Yeah,
instead
summer,
of
like a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you could have it put together. It still takes like wiring it.
Yeah.
All the stuff. Oh wait, now we got this crazy engine. We got to box the frame.
Yeah,
Shit. Now we got to pull the body. Now
needs more fuel.
Yeah, so maybe that one I should be looking for an old street rod.
Yeah.
That's like good paint, but is outdated. Like underneath, and you roll the chassis out, build a chassis for it, put it underneath, and because paint's so expensive these days. Like thinking of that, and that's probably a tip: spending money to save money. We did it with the DeLorean Roadster, with the Ruin Roadster. That was a good example, an exercise in that, where I spent a bunch of money up front, but I knew what all the stuff I wasn't going to use sells for, and next thing you know, you're into a painted car that is pretty presentable for a fraction, for what a rusty body would cost. And it's got nice paint, so it's like you're way ahead of the game. So sometimes it hurts to spend that chunk of money up front, but if you have the money to do it, or buying multiple things or whatever, that's a good way to do it. So you just have to have that little bit of extra money to be able to do it, but you could do it on a much smaller scale. You're buying a set of wheels, and a guy goes, "Oh, well, I'll throw in the extra set of hubcaps, for free if you pay whatever." And you could sell the hubcaps for, a big chunk off of what you paid for the wheels. Where now you're into the wheels for $50, and
we're back to car guy math again.
I guess we are talking about car guy math. It all goes back to car guy math.
Yeah, it does.
Re-listen to our car guy math.
I'll put the link in the description
the podcast,
below.
And that everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Car guy math could figure it out. But a lot of these tips, these are definitely. I mean, they seem basic, but a lot of times people don't realize it, and it seems overwhelming when you're getting into this stuff, but like that's the biggest part of it is those tips we said, and we talk about in a lot of other podcasts, immersing yourself in the hobby and culture.
Yes,
because that's a way to save money, is making friends. That we talked about it before, like having people that are good at different things. Well, you don't have those people if you don't go make friends. So like me, when I got heavy into this stuff, I was going to flea markets and introducing myself to people, and in auctions, and getting to know people and making friends. And you can't do that if you just sit in your basement and cry about not being able to afford a 32. You'd be pretty surprised. I've gotten some crazy stuff from friends, from leads and stuff. Like our one friend Jeff is in the Woodies, and I met him from going to auctions and flea markets and friend to friend type deal. And like now we're pretty good friends. And like I turned him on to a Woody project car
like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. I could have easily bought it for a good deal and flipped it, but he's really into Woodies. I, passed the lead on to him. He went and bought it, and it was like, because he helps us all the time with stuff. He's helping us. For anybody that's watched, he's the one that helped with the casting those parts for the blower. So it's like, again, we're all
barter. We're back to everything in the hobby comes full circle to the barter, car guy math. It all just works together.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're back to the original times of cavemen and Native Americans and things like that. It's like we're all in the earliest forms of bartering.
Yeah.
Before there was money, there was bartering. So do that.
So hopefully this podcast helped you. Hopefully if you've been wondering on how to get into the hot rodding hobby without, taking out a home equity loan or a second mortgage
don't do that.
Yeah, to afford. It's not as expensive as you think. You just have to put some time and effort and some.
You got to bounce around. There's going to be a lot of miles, a lot of time. But I think
it's a much more fun way to build a vehicle than just putting. It's like buying a brand new car versus building a car.
I feel like I can meet somebody, and I know you can meet guys, and if it's a guy that
100%
built the car or went through that process that we're talking about of like going and finding the parts and doing this and all that stuff, and the person that just like credit card bought all the best parts and put a car together and that's it. Mm-hmm. Like you meet somebody when they're at a show or an event or just out, driving, and it's like you could tell the guys that like they went through, they seen some shit, man.
Yeah,
they seen it. Like
they have a war-torn look.
Yeah, it's like you have that look in your eye that's like, man, I many long nights of getting this stuff together, and that for me, there's no better accomplishment or feeling, and that's the part. Even though it's frustrating sometimes, that is the part to me that's the most satisfying, is when you take that car out and drive it for the first time, but then you take it to the first couple events after you've done upgrades, or you put that car on the road, and especially when you have like a group of friends that helped you, and they're like, I remember when that thing was a scraps of metal on the ground at Carlisle Swap Meet, and you bought it in the rain, and now you're driving the thing. It's like that's the best thing. So I think taking that route is always going to be the better route, even if you have the money.
Definitely.
I think it's definitely the better way to do it. That's part of what old hot rods and old cars and restoring and modifying is all about to me. So
yeah, definitely.
That's what we're going to leave you with. So thank you guys for listening. If you have any ideas for some podcasts, or you're struggling on anything, or any of that kind of stuff that maybe we could help talk about, it's a good discussion point. Definitely, if you're watching this on YouTube, or listening, you can comment down below. So we always get great discussion with listeners or viewers within our comments. So if you have some tips for saving money or doing different things like that, definitely drop them below, because we might be able to learn something. I would love to learn new tricks.
I'm always down to learn new things.
Yeah, so comment down below and make sure you get your little subscription click there so you can know when we're doing more podcasts and videos. So thanks guys for following along. We appreciate it. Have a great one.
See you.